All right, let's dive into one of the most intense political dramas ever written. We're talking about the story of ancient Israel's very first kings, all found in the books of 1 and 2 Samuel. And trust me, this isn't just dry ancient history. It is a gripping story about ambition, faith, catastrophic failure, and the incredibly messy relationship between power and God. The entire epic really boils down to one single searing question. What does it actually cost a nation to get a king? The books of Samuel wrestle with this from every possible angle, showing this deep, deep tension between people wanting an earthly ruler and their promise to be ruled by God alone. Let's see how it all plays out. So our story kicks off with the first of our 3 main characters, Samuel. He's the last of Israel's great judges, a really respected prophet who's leading this kind of loose collection of tribes. But the nation is in a total crisis. They're being threatened by these powerful enemies like the Philistines, and the people are screaming for a solution that Samuel absolutely dreads. But to really get why his warning is so serious, you first have to understand the theological rulebook that governs this entire story. Okay, the key to understanding everything that's about to happen is this concept called Deuteronomistic theology. Now, it sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. If the nation and its leaders obey God's laws, they'll be blessed. Prosperity, victory, the good stuff. But if they disobey, they're going to be punished with total ruin. This one principle is the engine that drives the fate of every single character we're about to meet. So with that in mind, just picture the situation. The people of Israel are looking around at their powerful neighbors. They've all got kings and armies and centralized governments, and they want that. They want that security, that strength, so they demand a king to lead them. But from the perspective we just talked about, this request itself is a huge sin. It's a flat-out rejection of God as their one and only king. And Samuel delivers this absolutely brutal warning, straight from God. He tells them, look, a king isn't just about glory and parades. A king is going to bring a military draft, he's going to bring taxes, he's going to bring servitude. He will take your sons for his army, your daughters for his court, and your best land for his officials. But the people just don't listen. They want a king, and they're willing to pay that price.
Well, the people get their wish. And this brings us to our second major figure, Saul. God basically says, okay, you want a king, you got it. And Samuel anoints Israel's very first monarch. And the guy they choose, well, he seems absolutely perfect for the job.
Saul's reign starts off with so much promise. He looks the part, he's tall, he's handsome, and he immediately proves himself on the battlefield, winning this huge victory. For a minute there, it really seems like the people were right all along. But Saul's character is about to be put to the ultimate test. This is the moment it all falls apart. After a major battle, Saul directly disobeys one of God's commands, and when Samuel confronts him, he delivers this unforgettable line: obedience is better than sacrifice. The message couldn't be clearer. It's not about big, showy religious acts. It's about simple, straightforward obedience. And on that one fundamental test, Saul fails. Hard. See, Saul's downfall is really just a cascade of terrible choices. First, he gets impatient and performs a religious sacrifice that only a priest is allowed to do. Then, he directly disobeys an order from God by sparing an enemy king and keeping the best livestock, basically because he's more afraid of his own soldiers' opinions than of God. And finally, in this incredible act of arrogance, he builds a monument to himself. It all comes back to that central theme: disobedience brings punishment. God rejects Saul as king. So as Saul's reign just completely unravels, he becomes consumed by paranoia and jealousy. Why? Because Samuel has gone and secretly anointed his successor, a young shepherd boy named David. So while Saul is spiraling into madness, literally hunting David across the countryside, David is out there winning battles and winning the hearts of the people. And crucially, David shows incredible integrity. He twice has the chance to kill Saul and take the throne, but he refuses. A shadow kingdom is rising. And that brings us to our third and most important protagonist, David. He's set up to be the ideal replacement for the failed King Saul, but his story, well, it's way more complicated. A crazy mix of heroic triumphs and just devastating moral failures. After Saul dies tragically in battle, David's rise is just meteoric. He unites all the fractured tribes, he captures Jerusalem and makes it his capital, and he kicks off this golden age of power and stability for Israel. He becomes the model for what a king should be. This moment right here is the absolute high point of the entire story. God makes a personal, unconditional promise to David. He says, I'm going to build you a house, which means his royal family, his dynasty, will last forever. This becomes one of the single most important promises in the entire Bible. It cements David's legacy. But even with this divine stamp of approval, David is still, human. And here is the shocking, jaw-dropping turn. At the absolute height of his power, David commits two horrific crimes. He has an affair with Bathsheba, who happens to be the wife of one of his most loyal soldiers, Uriah. And when she gets pregnant, David arranges to have Uriah killed on the front lines to cover it all up. It is a disgusting abuse of power, and it proves that no one, not even God's chosen king, is above the law. The prophet Nathan bravely confronts David, and the consequences are just severe. It's a perfect example of that cause and effect theology we talked about. The punishments are tailored to the crime. David's sin was done in secret, so his family will be disgraced in public. He brought murder to another man's house, so violence will now infect his own family. The rest of the book is just the tragic story of this prophecy coming true, as rebellion, incest, and death completely tear David's family apart from the inside. So, after all this drama, what are the big takeaways from the books of Samuel? What are we supposed to make of these epic and, let's be honest, often tragic stories about Israel's first kings?
Well, three big themes really stand out. First, you have the crucial role of the prophet. People like Samuel and Nathan aren't just advisors, they are the conscience of the nation, holding power accountable to a higher authority. Second, there's a really deep criticism of the whole idea of monarchy. The story basically shows that this experiment, even with a great leader like David, is fundamentally flawed. And finally, it all circles back to that central theme of sin and punishment. The lives of Saul and David are the ultimate case studies in the belief that your actions have divine consequences.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really powerful question. The story holds up David as Israel's greatest king, the guy who got an eternal promise from God himself. And yet, it doesn't hide his capacity for terrible sin and the devastation that came from it. So what does that tell us about human leadership, about the hunger for power, and about the messy reality of faith? That's the challenge the books of Samuel leave with us today.